Now, looking at our first rule, and this is where it gets a bit tricky, so just make sure to pay attention. The first rule you need to know anything about is that anything to the power of 0 is always 1. So any number, so even if it's not a defined, even if they don't tell you what it is, if it's a to the power of 0, it's 1. If it's x to the power of 0, it's 1. If it's y to the power of 0, it's 1. Doesn't matter if it's a letter that you don't even know the value of. Anything to the power of 0 is always 1. So this is quite a simple rule. 1 to the power of 0 is 1. 622 to the power of 0 is 1. So just every time you get that, just remember it's always 1. Anything to the power of 0 is 1. There is one exception to this rule, and it's 0. 0 to the power of 0 is not 1. 0 to the power of 0 is undefined, but we don't need to go over why that is. Just remember, so even if it's a, or x, or y, or z, anything to the power of 0 is always 1. So, now that we know rule 1, let's go ahead and look at rule 2. And by the way, the whole point of learning these questions, or learning these rules even, is because you have to use these rules in questions. In this lesson, we're looking at the first 2 rules, and in the next lesson, we will cover the remainder of these rules. So, our next rule is a to the power of negative m is equal to 1 over a to the power of m. So basically, to make this power positive, we have to put it on the bottom of a fraction. So this rule catches a lot of people out as they're unsure what goes to the bottom and what needs to stay at the top. So I'll show you an example of the easiest way to decide what stays at the top and what needs to be moved. So here we have, and again this is just another example, b times by negative 4 is just equal to 1 over b to the power of 4. So and again, same thing here, 4 to the power of negative 2 is just equal to 1 over 4 squared, which would just be 1 over 16 as we know. So now looking at kind of a more complicated example, as this is where a lot of people go wrong. A lot of people assume, because of the rule, and it's a logical train of thought, that a to the power of negative b goes into, or this goes into this, where the 2 goes to the bottom as well. However, this is not correct, and it catches a lot of people out, even in a lot more advanced levels of maths. People way above this level often make this mistake, so it's something you need to watch out for, and hopefully just get good at now to avoid doing it in the future. So the first thing to realise is that the only thing we're doing is putting a to the power of negative b, not 2a to the power of negative b. If this 2 was in the brackets with the a, then yes, this would be the correct answer up here. But it's not. It's separate things. We have 2 multiplied by a to the power of negative b. So we must separate it into 2 kind of separate terms. The rule only states a letter multiplied by a power. So this is what we do. We separate this. These 2 things here are exactly the same. 2 multiplied by it. But put this in our separate brackets, and then once we apply the rule, that will give us 2 times by, and then 1 over a to the power of b, and then when we multiply that, that just gives us 2 over a to the power of b. And that's how you need to think about it. This 2 is just being multiplied by a to the power of minus b. So all you need to do is just put this in brackets and deal with this individually, because that's all the rule states for. The rule doesn't state what happens when there's a coefficient. So this is our final answer.